The second type of story that you talk about in a mythology course are legends and the fancy word sagas. Legends take place in our time. Legends take place in historical time. By our time, I don't mean today. It may be 1,000 years ago, but it takes place definitely within the context of human history, historical time. And so these legends refer to historical figures, to historical events. Again, these legends may not be true in the sense that you and I usually use the word true to mean they really happened, but they take place. Their setting of the setting of the story is in a historical time period. The characters in legends are heroes. Occasionally, gods show up. It wouldn't surprise us that gods show up in the story, but the major characters are heroes. And legends function to serve an historical purpose, to provide a story that binds a community together, to build a community, to make a community stronger, to create ties within a community. I've got a couple of legends here that you may have heard of. Robert of Locksley. Some of you, I know, are jumping up and down because you know who Robert of Locksley is. Almost always in a class of, say, 30 students, there are maybe 2 people who know who Robert of Locksley is, or was. Robert of Locksley lived about 1200. He's the source of the Robin Hood stories. He was a guy who, well, what do people say about Robin Hood? You know, people say he stole from the rich and gave to the poor. No. If you actually read the Robin Hood stories, he takes back tax money from the crooked government officials who are stealing tax money from the people, and he takes that money and gives it back to the people the corrupt government officials stole it from. A very different story. Well, Robert of Locksley, according to the legends now, Robert of Locksley wore a hood so that people wouldn't be able to recognize him when he stole money or took money back from the corrupt government officials. And so he started being called Rob in the Hood, and eventually that became Robin Hood. The Robin Hood story is set in about the 1200s in England, in Sherwood Forest. Forests were very rare. Even by 1200 in England, they're very rare today. Sherwood Forest, at the time that Robert of Locksley lived there, was about 12 acres. Not very big at all. Anyway, there's a lot to say about Robin Hood, but you see, the purpose of the Robin Hood story is that people who are being oppressed by corrupt government officials told the story of Robin Hood. That there used to be a guy who stood up for us, and he took back the money that the corrupt government people took away from us, and maybe we need a guy like Robin Hood again today. Really, Robert of Locksley in real life was probably just a local gangster. I mean, but this legend evolves around him of one who stuck up for the common people and wouldn't let those government tax collectors take away more money than they were allowed to by law. That's what I mean by community building, you see. Here's another legend. In one of the previous videos, we saw that horrible sculpture of George Washington, and here an American artist, Grant Wood, is kind of making fun of the George Washington legend here by making an adult George Washington be this little boy George Washington. I cannot tell a lie. I chopped it with my little hatchet. Obviously, it's a made-up story. It was made up by a writer named Parson Weems about 1825, I would say. That's just a guess. You can look it up on Wikipedia and correct me in an email. But about that time period. Who chopped down the cherry tree? I cannot tell a lie. I chopped it with my little hatchet. But it's a legend about George Washington. George Washington himself, an historical figure, just like Robert of Locksley himself was an historical figure. But this is a legend that develops around George Washington, as creating an image, you see, of our first president as being a very honest and a dutiful man and a man of integrity. So, our legends are set in a historical time period. They involve heroes, and they serve to build community.